For the next few minutes, we're going to be focusing on this story of 8 individuals who've been nominated for the Chief Justice position. They are Western Cape Judge President John Hlophe, Constitutional Court Justice Mbuyiseni Madlanga, Supreme Court of Appeal President Justice Mandisa Maya, former Cape Town City Manager Dr. Wallace Mgoqi, Public Protector Busisiwe Mkhwebane, Gauteng Judge President Dunstan Mlambo, Advocate Alan Nelson, and Deputy Chief Justice Raymond Zondo. Now, in a first for South Africa, President Matamela Cyril Ramaphosa called on South Africans to nominate qualified candidates for the position of head of the Judiciary of South Africa. Now, 25 people were nominated or recommended for the position of Chief Justice, but only 8 have met the criteria. That's what we are told. The successful candidate from them will take over from Mogoeng, whose term as Chief Justice ends on 11 October. Well, now, for more on this, I'm joined via Skype from Cape Town by Lawson Naidoo, from the Council for the Advancement of the South African Constitution, former Constitutional Court Justice Johann Kriegler, and Zikhona Ndlebe from the Judges Matter NGO, joining us via Zoom in Johannesburg. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us this hour. Now, I want to begin here. The President has broken from tradition, last month announcing that for the first time in South Africa, the new Chief Justice will be nominated or appointed after a public nomination participation process. A few weeks later, we are told there were 25 names. Now, 8 of them are known to us. Judge Kriegler, let me begin with you. Was this worth the public participation effort now that you see that there's 8 names that are now in this short list?
Dan, yes, I think the exercise was worth it. It was a public relations exercise. It was an exercise intended to show the transparency of the process, to show the democracy of the process, to show the responsibility of the whole of citizenry in this process. And I think it served that purpose.
Lawson, what are your views?
Well, I would agree with Justice Kriegler in that regard. I think it's a process that is to be welcomed. It certainly ensures a more open, transparent, and ultimately, we hope, a more competitive process, so that the part of the process and the outcome results in the best candidate being appointed. I think this is a marked departure from previous appointments of Chief Justice. If we go back to 10 years to 2011, where the then president only put forward one candidate. And if you're only scrutinizing one candidate, one can never be sure that the best person for the job is being appointed. So this is a process that we welcome.
Zikhona, your view?
I absolutely agree with both my colleagues that this process was worth it. In the past, the president would choose his candidate. The candidate would be interviewed by the JSC, and there would be consultation with political parties. And then in the end, that candidate would most likely be appointed as the Chief Justice. And that would only be one candidate. But now there is merit in the process because multiple candidates have been nominated. And this counters any suggestion that the president is using his power to appoint his chosen Chief Justice. So there is definitely merit in this process.
What about the critics who've said the president is kicking the can down the road, he doesn't want to take full responsibility, or he has outsourced his constitutional obligation? Judge Kriegler?
No, I don't think he's done that. I think he's cast the net widely at the beginning, but he has never said that he is abdicating his decision to the panel or to the JSC. He ultimately, in terms of the Constitution, will make the appointment. He will hear what the JSC has to say. He will hear what the leaders of parties in Parliament, in the National Assembly, House of Assembly have to say, and then he will make up his mind. Nothing in this process detracts from that.
Now, Lawson Naidoo, in another matter, I need to bring you here in because US KSEC went to court over the current process to fill the 2 vacancies that have opened up in the Constitutional Court. There's currently a rerun of those interviews after the debacle of April. This kind of process, which is open to the public, like the one we're seeing now, to appoint the new Chief Justice, can open itself up to challenges. Do you anticipate that?
Well, not in respect of the Chief Justice process, because I think it's an open and transparent process. That candidates have been nominated, the requisite processes have been followed, and hopefully, the JSE will play its role when the president consults with them. The leaders of political parties in the National Assembly will similarly play their role and lend their counsel to the president. But ultimately, in terms of the Constitution, the appointment of the Chief Justice is the prerogative that sits in the hands of the president, and this consultative process, I think, is one that is to be welcomed, but the president at the end of the day must make the decision, and it is his prerogative to do so.
Okay, thanks for that, Lawson. Zikhona, let me bring you in here now. Let's get to now discussing the nominees. These 8 names that we have seen. From my perspective as an ordinary citizen, when I looked at the names, I said, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, I could have expected them to be here to have met this criteria that we understand that Judge Navi Pilay's panel says they have met. Hence, the 8 names now have been announced by the president. But there are also other names when I'm thinking, what is this name doing here? But I'm not the one who's an expert. Your view, Zikhona, who should not be on this list?
Well, we cannot say who should not be on the list because the process is open. It has been open to the public. So the public has had a say as to who should be nominated as the next Chief Justice and interviewed by the JSC and ultimately appointed as a Chief Justice. But obviously there are various reservations. For example, there are reservations about Judge President Ndlebe because of the JSC complaint that was brought by the Constitutional Court justices. But then again, and we've got Advocate Busisiwe Mkhwebane, there are also reservations against her being a nominee. But again, the whole point of this process was that there would be legitimacy, there would be transparency in the appointment of the next Chief Justice, and that is the purpose of the process. Although there are reservations, what is important to note is that the Pillay panel that compiled the long list of nominees has set out a criteria that it will consider when compiling the short list of candidates that will be interviewed by the JSC. And that criteria looks at very important factors that the panel will consider. It looks at Section 174 of the Constitution. It looks at the integrity of the nominees, and the Pillay panel have to sift through and see which nominee should be shortlisted or not.
Yeah, you talk about integrity. I'm just wondering, you've got two names on this list of people who sort of facing impeachment challenges now and again. Judge Kriegler, your view? I mean, I'm asking you the same question. Who should not be on the list in your view?
It's not for me to answer, Dan. I'm astounded that 2 of them have been nominated, and I do believe that if either of them is to become the Chief Justice of this country, we will certainly need our national anthem, and God will have to protect the country.
Okay, we're going to discuss those issues later on. Lawson, your view, who should not be on the list? You guys don't want to answer the simple question. Who should not be on the list?
Well, look, Dan, I think we need to understand the list in its proper context. This is simply a list of people who've met the formulistic criteria of having submitted a letter, the nominee having accepted the nomination, and various other documents having been submitted properly. So this is not a short list that has gone through any process of consideration or a process of elimination. It's simply the candidates that have met the minimum criteria to be considered. So I think perhaps calling it a shortlist is incorrect and misleading to a certain extent. Okay,
so should we expect the Pillay panel to come back later on with a list that we can call... Sorry, Lawson, I cut in there because your network had frozen a bit. I was saying, should we expect then a proper shortlist later from the Pillay panel?
We will. We will indeed, because what happens now is what is important, is that the panel will receive submissions from the public on each of those 8 candidates up until the 15th of August. They then have a further 2 weeks to evaluate all of those comments that they will have received, as well as the credentials of the various candidates, and produce a shortlist to the president of between 3 to 5 names by the end of October. So I think there's a long way to go in the process, and we shouldn't be sidetracked by some of the names that appear on the list at the moment.
Yeah, so there's still some way to go. Zikhona, just on the one of the process, from what I saw from the announcement yesterday from the presidency of these 8 names, there is still time to make written submissions up to the 15th of October. Surely that should be welcomed.
Definitely, that is absolutely welcomed, because obviously there are reservations when it comes to the people that are on the long list. And Lawson is correct to say that it's not the final list. It is just the long list of nominees. There's still going to be a short list, and submissions must be made by the 15th of October. If anyone has any reservations, they must put those reservations on paper and give good reasons why they are objecting to any of the candidates that are on that long list.
Yeah, so it's an initial long list that's still going to be shortened, and we've got those 8 names. I want to discuss each of these names very briefly because of time for you. Who are you aware of? Who do you know? Who don't you know? And why you think, I know it's not you who've nominated them, why you think somebody, a member of the public, may have nominated them, if at all, if you know anything, or what do you know about them? We'll get into those because it's important, I think, in our discussion now as well, to hone in a little bit of the criteria, but mostly around what should a Chief Justice look like in terms, not physical looks, but in terms of what they bring to the table. What are these capabilities, these qualities, these values that they should bring to the table as a Chief Justice of the country? I would like us to discuss that shortly. So for now, we're going to take a quick break. Please don't go anywhere. Judge Kriegler and Ms. Ndlebe, don't go anywhere. And Mr. Naidoo, just stay connected. We'll come back to you shortly. You're watching the Midday View on this Tuesday afternoon. We're having a panel discussion around the 8 individuals on this long list that has been announced by the president as part of the process that he's opened up to the public for the first time in the history of South Africa before he chooses who will be the appropriate Chief Justice to take over from Mogoeng, who's stepping down after his term on the 11th of October. Stay with us here on ENCA DSTV channel 403.